In today's episode of Cranium Cookie, we're going to explore the Hamilton Museum of Steam and Technology. We'll learn about the history of why the pumps were created, how they supplied water to the residents of Hamilton, and how they work. First, we meet up with Coral and Julia to explore a bit of history.
We're wondering, how did this place come to be?
Okay, so this museum originally was Hamilton's first water pumping station, and we started pumping water in 1859. But to know the reason why we were built, you have to go even further back in time till 1854. So what happened in Hamilton that summer is that we actually had an outbreak of cholera, which actually traveled over here from Europe with immigrants. And so in July and August that year, 522 people died from cholera. So not a good summer to be here. Statistically, it was 1 in 40 people who passed away from cholera.
Wow.
Yeah. So what was happening in Europe, and actually specifically London, England at the same time, is that another cholera epidemic was happening in some of the poorer areas of London. And the scientific thought at that time was that it was bad air that caused the cholera to spread from person to person. Now today, we know it's not bad air. It's actually a waterborne disease, so if you drink contaminated water, then you're gonna get sick with this disease, with cholera. So actually, the main character in the story, his name is Dr. Jon Snow.
No way.
Yeah. So Jon Snow started mapping out the neighborhoods where cholera was happening and which households were getting sick, how many people, and also where they're getting their water from. And she actually linked it to this one specific pump, the Bond Street pump. So the Bond Street pump was actually closed down eventually. A lot of people said Dr. Jon Snow is a complete quack who didn't know what he was talking about. But once they closed that pump, the cholera epidemic ended.
So he was the hero.
He was the hero. So we were actually built because of this newer scientific knowledge that it was contaminated drinking water. And so after that horrible epidemic that happened in the summer, the city of Hamilton put an ad in the Hamilton Spectator asking engineers to put together proposals, designs for a sewage system and a water treatment system. And this was the result.
That's amazing. That's absolutely incredible.
Wow, I'm glad they discovered that unclean drinking water was the culprit. Now that we know why the pumps were created, the next question is how exactly do they work? Charlie joins Julia as she runs him through how the pumps used to work and talks a little bit about how the water is purified today.
This is actually a giant diagram of where we used to pump water from and where it went. So Hamilton got running water in 1859, and at that point we believe Hamilton was the 7th city in Canada for running water, which is pretty cool. So Lake Ontario actually is just right over there. So here we have Lake Ontario, that's our source of water. Now they did not quite understand about germs, bacteria, water treatment quite yet, but they knew you don't want to turn on your tap in your house and have a little dead fish come out. That's bad. So they built up a big pile of sand to filter all the stuff out of the water. So the water comes through, but the fish and the plants and the rocks stay there.
Wait, so the only barrier originally was sand?
Yes, but sand does do some cleaning and filtration as well, so it was good for that. So then there was a pond here called the infiltration basin, and that's just a clean, still water waiting to come to our pump house, which is this building right here. So just thanks to gravity and a pipe sloping downhill, it goes down into our pump house. Then we pump water from here uphill through pipes up to our reservoir. So Hamilton's really lucky. We have a hill, and so this hill actually, we just made use of it. Instead of building a water tower, we built a giant lake up there that held 53 million liters of water, and everyone who lived in Hamilton lived downhill, so it came to your house thanks to gravity.
Oh, cool. Tell me about how water is filtered out now, because it's not just sand, right?
It is not. They do have physical filters that are really good for keeping out things like garbage floating in the water, zebra mussels, you don't want those in.
Okay.
And then they do something called flocculation, which is very fun to say.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yes, exactly. So flocculation basically is they add a chemical called polyaluminum carbonate, or PAC. You could call it PAC for short. Yeah. They add that in and they stir it up, all the water, and that actually makes the little dirt pieces and particles and things that are floating in the water stick together so they get bigger and heavier. And then it goes into a sedimentation tank, which is basically like our infiltration basin. And it's just still water, and so those really thick, they're called flocks, those pieces of junk, the flocks.
Hence flocculation.
Yeah. Sinks down to the bottom.
Okay.
And then they just clean that out every once in a while. And then there's a whole filtration process with using sand and gravel and carbon, like we find in a Brita filter, the same black stuff. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Neat! It's interesting to hear a bit about how things have changed over the years, but now we move on to the shining jewel of the Hamilton Museum, steam technology. Adriana explores the old pump house with Julia and learns about steam, pistons, and engineering.
Okay, well tell me more. I have no idea other than like steampunk and like I should be wearing goggles right now or something.
Not so much.
Not so much. Okay, let me know everything.
All right, so we're standing next to the steam cylinders, and so this is actually where the steam goes, and it lets the engine move around.
Okay.
So if we had X-ray vision, you would see the piston, which is inside each of these cylinders here.
Okay.
And we want to actually move the piston up and down. That's our goal right here. And that's going to make the entire engine move.
Cool.
So there is actually going to be a box of steam waiting here and another chest or steam chest of steam waiting right at the top. That steam is pressurized, so it's really strong. And when the piston's at the bottom, like here, we're going to let some steam in the bottom. Now, because that steam's all pressurized or squished up, it's going to actually expand now because it's in a much larger space. That's going to send the piston up to the top, and now we have to send it down. And so we stop sending in the steam at the bottom because we don't need it there anymore. We send it in at the top. That steam gets bigger, and then it sends the piston down, and then it keeps happening and happening and happening. Now, the secret is the steam doesn't disappear. Oof, you have to send it somewhere, right?
Oh.
So when we're letting steam in at the bottom, different steam, the steam that's trapped in here, that's let out.
And that's
at the top.
And that's what you want. Like that's like the whole thing that we're doing here.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay,
Yeah.
lots of moving parts.
Lots of moving parts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might need more education on this. All right, so downstairs we were talking about different steams and pistons and the columns, but now what are these things?
These are called walking beams, and they are doing the magic to spread that movement from the steam on this end to the water pumping side of the engine over here. So the sticks that are coming out of the pistons, they're called the piston rod, and they're actually attached over there to our walking beam, which is basically a humongous seesaw or teeter-totter. It's rocking back and forth, and that's making both our water pump go up and down, and it's also turning our huge giant flywheel with a crank. Basically, it's like someone's foot on a bicycle pedal.
Oh, okay, that I get. And I also would like to just point out that you have the best dance moves because of the steam. It was from here to here and then a little bit of this. So I mean, I feel like I now understand steam technology from your dance.
Yeah.
And the dance, and we're cutting.
So we're actually standing on something that's very cool, and it's very easy to miss, actually. So there's two divots on the floor. So, you're standing in one, and I'm actually standing in the other. It's okay, stand away.
Okay.
So these two divots, we believe, were made by our chief engineer. So we only had one chief engineer the entire time that this place was run from 1859 to 1910. So 51 years. His name was James McFarlane. Here he is, right here.
Ooh, I love his beard.
Yeah, so he retired at the age of 81. And so we believe these divots were made by 51 years of James McFarlane walking up these stairs, stopping, assessing, looking at the engine, listening, and most of the time he doesn't have to walk further. Everything's okay. He's just gonna turn around and go back down the stairs.
That's so funny, and I can see him exactly standing just.
Yeah. Yeah, very proud stance.
That's
proud
so
man.
great. I love things like that. Thank you for showing us.
A big thank you to Julia and the Hamilton Museum of Steam and Technology. We really appreciate you hosting us and teaching us a few things. If you're ever in Hamilton, consider going to visit the museum. It's filled with amazing technology that's really breathtaking to see in person. Thanks for watching this episode of Cranium Cookie, and until next time, don't forget to keep your brain fed with noms for your noggin.
Thanks for watching, Cookies. And remember, you can always watch the next episode over here. You can subscribe over here. And this one is a secret link to I don't know where. So it's only for the most adventurous of cookies. You should click that. And until next time, remember to keep your brain fed with noms for your noggin.